our Public Works Department's been working on, they completed all the meter reading for the month. They delivered 212 non-payment notices. They've done 66 work orders since that date also, and 13 service line repairs. I have a list of service lines here that the district has been plagued with. We're trying to save water, but we got water leaking everywhere. Installed a new water line over on Diamond Street for the streetscape over there. And we installed 400 feet of electrical conduit here at the facilities.
Here at this facility?
Yes.
For what reason?
For a camera, for a security camera.
Okay.
And they've done 40 of the master meters since March 26th. So we haven't had a whole lot of master meters put in the ground because we've been working on water leaks.
Are they on this side of the tracks? They are, aren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, we've still got about 2,700 of them to install.
Where are you putting them at on this side?
Well, they've done all Laurel and Acacia, sort of on that track down 25th Street there.
Thank you.
John, can you tell them about the leaks that are springing up? You mentioned that they're springing up everywhere, and it's kind of...
It seems like on the whenever the weather changes, our service lines, which are a polyurethane line, they tend to get leaks. They just start splitting, and you know, where a rock will rub up against them or something. They'll either get a pinhole or they'll actually get some splits running in them.
You say service line. What is a service line?
It's the water. It's a water line from the main out in the street up to the property where your meter's at.
Okay.
So every house has a service line that goes all the way out to the street into the main.
That's the part
That's the parts that we're having the problems with.
Is it a particular age?
It's the particular material that they used back when they were installed. We have two different types here in Rosamond. Well, we have copper also, but the polyurethane, we have the copper size, which is a thin wall, 3/4 inch or 1 inch, depending on what size they ran. The copper size is a thin wall polyurethane, and it doesn't stand up to our grounds out here. Just, you know, for some reason, the rocks or movement in the grounds, it springs a leak. The other real problem that we have are tree roots. Tree roots get along and squeeze it, and it ends up splitting it, and then we have leaks. So
The tree's happy, but not something else.
yeah, we had one up the other night about 10 o'clock at night up on Capri Street. They're digging the whole street up. So
John, have we looked at increasing our spec on those service
the
lines?
specs have been increased since there's no longer any. Well, since I've been here the last 15 years, there's been no more copper size poly put in. But all the existing stuff is what we're having problems with. Particularly one trailer park on 20th Street that the district is responsible for maintaining all the water lines in that trailer park. We've just about gone through it, repaired 90% of the lines in there. And once we do a repair, if you don't pull a new line, 6 months later you're back there, you know, doing another repair, because we have to crimp the line to actually shut it off. We do our fix, and then once we get out of there and our fix has been fixed for a while, well, we crimped it, starts leaking later on.
This is on the east side of 20th?
West side of 20th Street.
One of the three on west.
Yep. Trade winds would be.
Okay, is that very well occupied? One of those is not too well occupied.
It's full. Yeah.
It's full. Okay.
Yeah, the middle ones, which used to be Stonehenge, I'm not sure what they call it now, but it's empty. I think there might be 2 trailers in it.
Okay.
But yeah, that's our problem child with that and the housing track right here next to the high school.
John, do you know if we ran that pipe in there to begin with? How we inherited inside the park?
I don't know how we inherited that, because most of our trailer park, well, not most of them, but half of our trailer parks are actually master metered outside. So there's 1 meter for the whole trailer park, and then, you know, the park takes care of the residents themselves. This particular park is just like a housing tract. Every trailer has a meter in it. The service lines.
Is it the park furthest south or the park furthest to the north? Trade winds?
Furthest to the north. Be the closest to Marie Street. Trade winds.
Can't remember.
I have a staff report, and I've got a request to read at this juncture. Community member dropped this off for to be read in this section. You want the letter first or the staff report?
Move the staff report.
background in the sewer fee to the tax roll, much of the confusion of our water bill, was the fact that many water companies in the Antelope Valley had the sewer charges on the tax bill when people would come in.
We're on the promissory note.
Pardon?
We're on the promissory note.
Oh, on the promissory note, I am so sorry. I'm just, on the promissory note, I was just going to say that this is probably best handled by our accountant to discuss the ins and outs of the note itself. So I'll just hand it over to Brad.
We all got your agenda packets last week, so hopefully you read the staff report, the promissory note. It was at your direction to create this note, so we created a resolution and promissory note owning the lighting fund up to $50,000 to subsidize its operations until we could further find funding sources. If you have any questions, happy to answer them, but it's pretty straightforward.
It does require us to maybe pay it back next year?
It has the same payment terms as all the other interfund notes, so they go on in perpetuity.
Okay. Council, had a chance to look at that?
Yes, prior to it being placed in the agenda package, I approved.
Okay. Well, having had council look at that, I move we approve follow Mr. Rockabrand's recommendation and approve the resolution 2015-5, authorizing the interfund promissory note between its water and sewer enterprise fund and its street lighting operation.
Moved and second. Any public discussion? Go ahead. Good evening. I want to address the proposed passage of Resolution 2015-5. And what you are doing, although it might be for good intentions, it is wrong and, in my opinion, possibly illegal. What I want to address on this issue are the facts and not speculation. Fact one, you want to borrow $50,000 from restricted funds to go towards a fund that is already operating at a deficit. Fact two, to legally borrow money from restricted funds, you have to have a plan to pay that money back. Resolution 2015-5 has no repayment language in the resolution. So how are you going to pay back the money? If you think by closing Williford Park is going to free up all of the discretionary funds, you are wrong. That money has to go back to pay for the loans given to parks over the years, and since you also voted to disassociate the RCSD from the Rosamond Foundation, you eliminated part of the repayment plan for parks, because that's exactly what the foundation was created for. It was part of the plan to pay back the borrowed money. Directors Landsgaard, Mackay, and Shingledecker ran on a campaign promise to turn the streetlights back on. There was a legal and binding election that took place over the streetlight issue on May 14, 2014, where the residents of 40 new lighting districts voted to pay the proposed assessment fee and keep their streetlights on, or to not pay the proposed assessment fee and have their streetlights turned off. 16 of the 40 zones voted to not join the assessment district and to have their lights shut off. As with all elections, it does not have to be unanimous for the vote to be binding. Whether a measure passes by 1 vote or 100, the majority rules. This also applies to our elected officials as well. You 3 new directors have made many claims about the election was flawed, not done properly, the people did not understand, etc. This board has even resorted to scare tactics using crime and women getting raped as a reason to take this action tonight. While these reasons might be valid reasons for trying to overturn the election results, you do not have that right or authority to overturn the election. If you truly feel that you have valid reasons for reversing the results of the election, then your only recourse is to petition the courts and to make your argument before a judge and make your case. And if the judge agrees with your argument, then the judge, and only the judge, can order the election results be overturned, order a new election, or order the lights to be kept on, or any other action that the judge deems appropriate. By borrowing $50,000 from the water and sewer fund to keep the lights on in the zones where the majority of the voters voted to have them turned off constitutes a gift of public funds. Using public funds to pay for streetlights that they voted to turn off. By taking this action, you are forcing the people in LLAD number 2 to pay for the streetlights of those who are not paying anything in addition to paying for their lights as well. I live in a zone that voted to turn off the streetlights. And even though I voted yes for the assessment, and even though I would prefer to have my lights on, it is not right to have my fellow citizens pay for my zone's lights when my zone by a majority vote voted to not pay for them and to have them shut off. We live in a democratic society where the right to vote is sacred and protected by the Constitution. And even though we may not like the results of an election, I respect our democratic process and the rights of the voters, and respect the results of every election, and suggest you do the same.
We don't know, and that's one of the things we were looking at. The neighborhoods, for example, the largest one over there on the east side, where Mr. Woods lives, where Mr. Webb lives, it can revote. I think also there was a close vote where Mr. Woods lived. The other thing is that we don't need to borrow the money as far as I can tell. We have something called a reserve. A reserve is $38,000, the bill's $25,000. The vote we're taking here right now gives us the ability to borrow as needed, which is the prudent thing to do. The third thing we can do, contrary to what the speaker said, is we will have more money freed up. There's $230,000 every year that the speaker was, when he was on the board, was putting into the park, losing that money. And now he says that all $230,000 that we have as reserve money must go to pay back the loan that he illegally took out, is what he's saying. I think $230,000 for parks versus a $50,000 loan for street lighting, that we will have a reserve to pay that back if we need to from our restricted funds, because we will actually have restricted funds for the first time in 7 years, come to July 1st budget, is the more logical choice. And for that reason, we have ways for paying back the loans, and we will be able to pay back the loans. And with that in mind, I think we're doing the prudent thing for the district, both from a public safety standpoint as well as from a financial standpoint.
Mr. Landsgaard, can I ask you to clarify the word reserve that you're using?
My understanding is that the lighting fund, when we discussed this back in March, had a $38,000 reserve. Is that correct?
That's incorrect.
How much did it have?
Nothing.
Okay, where
The lighting reserve was exhausted in 2010.
Why was there a $38,000 reserve showing?
The interior lighting reserve.
That's
The
different.
dollar that was placed back years ago by the entire community to pay for the lighting at that time.
That's
The
been
previous
exhausted.
board reallocated to arterial lighting,
It's been exhausted.
is what he's referring to.
Okay, I saw, for some reason I saw that on the, and it was presented to us. You say it's not there?
As of December 31st, Treasurer's report, it's April.
Okay.
We pay $60,000 in lighting bills every month.
Okay, so you're saying that we're going off the December's report and it showed reserve, it's not there.
Well, it's April. You asked us to continue to pay the bill every month. So that's been over $100,000 in expenditures out of those funds. There is no money left over.
Okay.
We are now in an additional deficit in the current fiscal year that you're going to have to deal with as well.
Now,
Where I see a problem here is we're gonna pay for 40 lights on Diamond Street with that dollar, but yet we turn people's lights out in the community. Is that right or wrong?
I cannot answer that question.
The other question though for the accountant is, we will have a $230,000, give or take, restricted money, not restricted money,
Discretionary.
discretionary funds, yeah, coming in next year, that's not otherwise, we're not gonna have to budget that for the West Park pool. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's nothing preventing us from saying each one of our 5 services gets a fifth of that, or we can say 100% goes to water, we can say 100% goes to parks, as we have in the past, is that correct?
At some point, we'll have to have a budget discussion about how those discretionary revenues are gonna be allocated, but we do need to address the $2 million loan that's already in place. With that money, even if you allocated all 200,000 of it every year, it's gonna take you 10 years to pay back the existing debt, let alone any new debt or operating deficits.
So there's nothing that says we have to allocate 100% of that.
That's correct.
Okay, and we could allocate money from our discretionary funds, $25,000 a year to take care of this, is that correct?
We could, but at what point are you gonna stop subsidizing all of the things that are losing monies with the things that you're getting, plus give all your money back for your other enterprise services? We need to be having long-term discussions about the use of finance here.
And we can also revote those districts, those 14 districts that voted no, correct?
Why would you do that? We already paid to have it done.
Well, if we have
They
one,
already spoke.
question is, can we?
Yes, you
Okay,
can.
so that's the only question I have.
And if the people came back and gave the exact same answer, would you want to continue to subsidize it with water money?
They would have to say that's the answer they prefer the night lights from the sky, that's fine. At this point in time, we've heard plenty of discussion with the community saying, like, we lost by 1 vote. We'd like to have that revisited, so.
My only concern is how to pay for it. I don't care about the politics behind it. I'm your fiduciary consultant and advisor. And I'm paying more money out than's coming in every month for services that are being subsidized by an enterprise fund that we now are gonna go into our next resolution and give away more money. So I understand the policy side of it and wanting to run on platforms of giving back to the people, but at some point we need to have the tough discussions about how these monies are gonna be generated. I can't walk into Albertsons with $1 and buy $10 worth of groceries. It just doesn't work that way.
Understand that, I don't need 50,000, we're not going to give 50,000 to the street light, we're going to give it as needed, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I was just going to point it out, Steve's got it. Go ahead.
I'd like to clarify on the streetlights in the reserve. When the vote was taken, that reserve was set up based on the restructuring of the lighting in Rosamond. That reserve was intended to be established based on that reorganization. It did not take into consideration the monies that we were losing by not addressing the lighting issue the year before, and taking this issue of deficit more seriously and acting on it. So we had a deficit, and in order to properly arrange the vote and where the dollar was going to go as far as the arterial, that was set up and produced a $38,000 a year reserve. Mr. Wallis is correct. In the arterial lights, those 40 lights are wrapped into the arterials. That was what the request of the community wanted, because they wanted those types of lights in that general area. Now, I think it's unfair because it's an arterial and it's something for the community to say that we're turning lights off so they could have their 40 lights. Those lights haven't even come on yet. We're not even talking about the expense that they will bring, but suffice it to say, it's not going to dip once the arrears are paid up. It's going to dip to 38,000. Those were already accounted for, and they're not available to pay off what you're looking for to pay on the existing streetlights. I might point out that the bill to turn the lights back on is in excess of $11,000. And so some of this deficit is being created also by those that voted no and won, and their lights went off or were to go off, are no longer paying and haven't been paying since last July. So that's creating a deficit of revenue that came in previously. So when you start looking at how did this all happen, it's not by hocus pocus, it's by actual, you get the monies in and you can only spend what you get in. And we had considered those lights on Diamond Street in that arterial.
But they are still paying something. They're paying that $1 on their water bill. Everybody is paying for some lighting.
Right, and that lighting is Rosamond Boulevard, Sierra Highway, 20th Street, all of those. It's a benefit to everybody in the community.
Everybody pays property taxes that comes back by way of discretionary funds to the district. Correct?
That's not what the ad valorem tax is discretionary. Your board has that decision on where you put those monies, based on where those monies were being spent before. There was no other choice but to find a funding source for that.
Understand. But the parks, but the bottom line is it's there. That's money that everybody chips in on the ad valorem from one end of the district to the other.
Right, they do.
Okay, I can't vote for this resolution the way that it's drafted.
What would you like to amend it?
I would like to amend it that we have a way to pay it back.
Me
in there.
Me too.
Because I'm complaining about the hard loan that was taken from the water and sewer to $2 million, and now we're gonna do the same thing that we're complaining about the previous board did. I can't vote for this.
Mr. President, if I could just clarify quickly, the resolution isn't required to state repayment terms. All the resolution is doing is approving the promissory note, which does.
I understand that, sir, but also because it's a resolution and we're going to be asking to borrow money, then I believe that my personal thing is in this resolution should be the payback vehicle on how this is going to be paid back.
Isn't that done with the-
Both legal counsel and I don't feel that you need to do that.
That information is set forth in the note, but if you have a personal preference that it be in the resolution, it can be redrafted.
Can we add resolution?
Yes, all the resolution is doing is approving the promissory note. The promissory note has the repayment language.
Okay, can we add the repayment language in there, or is that you okay?
I'm not voting for this.
I mean, if we change the resolution to say it shall be paid back from discretionary funds.
When we put in this resolution, the vehicle for paying it back, and it's legit, I'll consider voting for it. But the way it's written right now, I will not vote for it.
Okay, my motion, to amend my motion is that add a 6.0 fund shall be repaid from street lighting's portion of discretionary funds.
Just want to make it, just to clarify for myself and everybody here, if you vote this in, you're saying that discretionary funds or whatever is going to pay to turn the lights back on for those that voted no. But those of us that are in areas where we voted yes are still going to pay for that. But the areas that voted no won't have to pay.
No, we're doing it temporarily. It's not going to preclude us from representing a revote, for example.
But until that revote happens,
Yes.
those people will be getting their lights back on without having to pay the additional fees that the rest of us did.
They already are paying.
So basically, the vote that we had means nothing.
I voted yes, my neighborhood is lit up, and because your neighborhood isn't, all of a sudden we're paying for your lights. This is not right. Don't look at me like that, Ellen.
My neighbor doesn't
Stop
have
it.
any lights, never has, but that's okay.
Okay, but anyway, your businesses, so in your other properties, I think this is ludicrous. You're making me pay twice for my lights and for someone else's, when we don't even have the money. Crazy.
I moved here about 2 years ago. I've been overhearing all of this and seeing this go on social media sites and everything else. I understand your reasoning for wanting to borrow the money to turn the lights back on, that there has been a large public outcry against the lights being turned off. And you mentioned of a revote. Now, will that happen soon? Are you going to have a revote? I know I myself was a renter living on Diamond Street. I never got any notification whatsoever of a vote. Now, my landlord that owned the property does not live in this community. As do a lot of people that live here, their landlords don't live in this community. So it's one thing for them to be able to vote no, to say, oh, well, I'm not paying for a light, when it's not them that has an effect on it. It's the actual resident of this community who had no idea of the vote due to the fact that the notification for the vote was sent with the water bill, which is included in the rent. So if you want to have a vote on issues of this community, it should be of residents of this community, not of people who own property here who have no other interest in this community. By shutting off these lights and having a vote based on people who own property here but do not live here and do not spend any of their money here, you're killing your community. People will not move here, and those are people that will spend money in this community. Now, I know for a fact that a lot of people that live here take their children to Lancaster and Palmdale to go to school, take them on base to go to school, spend all their money down in that school, in that area. Now, I'm pretty sure that once you cross Avenue A, we lose that tax money. That tax money is gone, and it benefits LA, and Kern County loses out. Now, unless you want those people to spend their money here and live here and make this community what it used to be before all of this craziness started happening, where lights were shut off, we started losing our community services, I suggest that maybe you should figure a way to inform our actual community, not the business property owners that don't have any involvement in this community whatsoever, but the actual residents of this community when there are votes. The only reason I even know of these meetings is from a Facebook page. And other than that, I have no idea. Now, I'm not a property owner. I'm still a renter, and I do not live in town. But I feel the pain of the people who do, and it's only going to get worse. Without the lights, the crime is going to rise. I lived on Diamond Street. My garage got broken into. Some of you were at the community watch meeting where I brought that up with the sheriff's department. There are no lights on the south end of Diamond Street. People down there run rampant. They do what they want. My car's been vandalized. It was broke into. My garage was broke into. I lost all of my mechanic tools. Thousands of dollars in mechanic tools. My landlord doesn't live here. Lives in Long Beach or somewhere further south. She did nothing to benefit this community. She did nothing to upgrade her property, and she is a slumlord, like many who are on that street. Now, I suggest that if you guys want to have money to put the lights on, I understand that you're wanting to borrow money against money we don't have and money we're not going to get because people aren't going to pay that money because they voted against it. Your first action, course of action, should be to schedule a vote with the residents of this community, who this resolution affects, not the property owners, not just the property owners. And then you also need to figure out a way to be able to collect the monies from those said residents, not just the property owners. Now, the property owners can pass the buck on through the water bill to their renters, but if we're only talking about $1 or $2 a month, it's really not going to make that big of a difference. But what I don't understand is how, even if it's $1 or $2 a month, there's 15,000 people in this community. Figure 4 people per household. We'll say 3. That only leaves 5,000 houses. That's only $5,000, and you're wanting to pay a what? $11,000, $60,000 a month bill off of 5,000 houses? That math don't add up either. That's just my 2 cents, gentlemen.
Gentleman, Jack Miller. You know, I hear a lot of the discussion, and kind of know what the issue, understand it is. I can see what you're dealing with, but it seems like you keep wanting to repay a bad program from the start. And to me, from a business aspect, I worked for some of the largest corporations in the world myself for many, many years. And a bad business decision like that would just not be accepted. But I would say that instead of looking at it on a negative, they would look at it as a positive. And what I mean by that, instead of just going with the same old bad program, going in deficit, and as some of you attended the meeting with Ron Smith about thinking outside the box, what about looking at lighting alternatives. You know, we got our solar age, there's solar options, other methods of actually reducing the cost to where this community can afford those type of assets, instead of just continuing going home and paying for something that we can't afford today.
He's already looked into that and tell him about solar lights.
Solar lights are way too expensive. The maintenance, the batteries, everything that you have to consider for solar lights. Now, I think you were referring to putting in solar to mitigate the power consumption, is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say anything specifically, just talking about looking at alternative options. I mean, you can come up with negatives all day long. It still doesn't mean that you're thinking outside the box and trying to come up with a solution that is viable to the situation that we have. I don't have those answers, obviously not. I'm not gonna sit here and try to act like I know what you already know.
Well, and that is an illustration that we're not just sitting here and have not thought of that. LED, a lot cheaper in power consumption. Too expensive because the price that Edison put on an LED pole was more than an incandescent light that's out there existing, so it made no sense. Buying all of the street lights and running our own program would require the district to put on a crew in order to do the maintenance, which again didn't pencil after you made the expenditure to buy them all. The other options are put in a solar field and generate power.
That was kind of my thought, actually.
And that is something we can't do to mitigate street lighting through Edison, as long as they own them. We might be able to do that if they were our lights, but we'd have to buy every light in the community in order to accomplish that. Again, too expensive. The return on investment on those items are too long for the district to put that kind of revenue out and expect any type of relief in the near term. So we have thought about various ways that we could mitigate the cost of our street lights. And unfortunately, because they belong to Edison and they don't belong to us, we're limited in our ability to make a lot of what we would normally think about if we owned them at our own home. We could make a lot of those decisions on our own, but we don't. And the cost to do it is cost prohibitive. You mentioned Ron Smith and his conversation about what they're doing in Lancaster. I think it's extremely commendable what they're doing in Lancaster on their lighting and the power situation. Unfortunately, before we addressed the street lights and turning them back on, I found out from the Southern California Edison rep that they had 2 weeks earlier decided, the president of Edison had decided they weren't selling any community municipal lighting. Again, they weren't going to process it and do that. I don't know why, and I don't know the ins and outs, nor did they elaborate on that. It was just what was told me. So when I'm told that by Edison that they're not going to do that, it doesn't leave a lot of hope to start running up that tree to try to get it to happen. So
We did a re-vote on this? What was the cost when we voted before? I mean, is this an exorbitant amount of money or is it a small amount
About
of money?
30,000, wasn't it?
So I would think that would factor in whether or not you're gonna do a re-vote. If it's really expensive, it might not be worth
Well,
it.
for 40 districts, was it 30,000 for 40 districts, and for 14 districts, less than that, I imagine.
I'm not sure, and I don't know that we could just do the ones that voted no. If you were gonna vote, you'd probably have to vote, everybody would have to be able to vote.
I'll have to look at that, I guess.
Because I believe that you would be giving only one side of a decision the opportunity to change their mind.
No, you'd be devoting the districts that didn't voted no, you can make district specific.
But what you're doing by doing that is saying your no vote is a wrong vote.
Right.
And in whose eyes is that?
No, what we're saying is, the no vote is not a wrong vote, your no vote is a right vote. We need to go back and look at what we said, how we set those districts up, those specific districts up that you don't like about them.
What don't they like about the districts?
Well, that's what we need to find out.
I think the people regret probably voting the way they voted.
Well, you know, maybe the price was too high, maybe the price, they didn't offer enough to them, maybe it's structured right, and there's a number of things that could be
I
wrong.
want to point this one point out. Normally, when you do a vote like that, you're required by law to have one hearing before you count ballots. We had 7. We had 7 meetings.
And after each meeting, you tweaked it?
No, after each meeting, we kept explaining what was going on.
Mr. Perez and distinguished board members, good afternoon. I'm Scott Travis. I live over on the United area, and a lot of people in my area did not vote. I've been talking to people in my area, oh, I didn't know they was gonna turn out the lights, and, you know, a lot of people work and they just didn't have a chance to vote, and they don't come to a lot of meetings. I personally believe if you give them another chance to vote, now that it's been dark for a while, they will vote yes, and, you know, come up with some sort of schedule where you charge them a back fee and make up the extra money. Do what you gotta do to make the money so you have the money, but I want the lights back on.
Thank you.
To vote on that first, on the amendment to add the language to the resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0.
Aye.
This is just to change the language,
Add 6.0.
not to pass the resolution.
Yeah, just add 6.0 to the
Okay,
resolution.
I'll vote for that.
Vice President Alfred Wallis,
Yes.
President Edmund.
Yes.
Vote, we do this, because I won't vote for it if we don't.
Now, this is the preliminary to look at fixing the entire situation.
Well, what we're voting on is to do the law.
Right, but we're gonna put it up for vote again.
Yes.
There will be a vote.
Yes.
There will be another vote.
Yes. And hopefully it'll be done by the county, not by a organization, because I myself didn't get the ballots.
We had somebody special come and do the election, conduct the election, we didn't pay for it.
Oh, we paid for it.
We had someone else do it, right?
Yes.
And when did you say that was gonna happen?
Is there a time restraint on
Say
how,
it's in the future,
how soon?
Okay, future,
As quick as we can
future's
do
a
it.
big word.
as quick as we can do it.
I think that other election we had too was kind of like had some flaws in it too, when they sent some of the stuff out, right? It wasn't done real good.
Well, you put
Can
the
I get a
sewage
point of
bill on the
clarification?
ballot, just put the
We
water.
have people
lights on
asking
the ballot.
questions in the audience, and we can't record it properly. But there was a question about the vote. I think you're on the resolution, correct?
Yes.
And there might be some confusion about what is going to be voted on, whether it's going to be a revote of the lighting issue or the vote of the resolution.
This is the vote on the resolution.
Thank you.
Okay? Okay. Now we'll call for the question. Although it's a roll call vote.
Treasurer Landsgaard,
Aye.
Treasurer Shingledecker,
Aye.
Treasurer Glennan,